My name is Torrin Childs. I'm the incoming Vice President for Membership, and I am speaking to you today from my home in London, Ontario, Canada. I'm excited to begin my upcoming work for NATS, and I am pleased and reassured as I begin that we have a detailed playbook, a strategic plan that will guide us in our work. The 2-year development of this strategic plan, framing our future, was wise and forward-looking. I've been extremely impressed as I watched this plan evolve since its inception. As Vice President for Membership, I will work to realize the ambitious membership goals set out in the strategic plan, to retain our current members and to reach out, inviting more people to enjoy the benefits of NATS membership. Professional development and networking, sharing best practices in a time of social distancing, and just talking with colleagues, it's all more important now than ever these days. We want to diversify our membership, not just demographically, but also professionally. We want to reach out to more choral directors, collaborative pianists, our contemporary commercial music colleagues, speech-language pathologists, and as the first non-US citizen to serve as a national executive officer, I am making manifest our goal to reach out to the wider international community. For the first time, we have a diversity and inclusion statement to guide our association. I look forward to the work ahead, and I look forward to working with you, using the strategic plan to frame our future and make NATS stronger together.
Hi, I'm Karen Brunson, President of NATS, and I'm very happy to introduce this next plenary session entitled Notorious RBG in Song, Collaboration and the Art of Dramatic Concert. I want to add to what Torrin just said. We are also really enjoying our composers, and they are making such a difference in our lives with their new music, and you're going to meet a lot of them today, right now. The creator of Notorious RBG in Song is Patrice Michaels. Now, Patrice is my friend and my colleague. And Patrice, how long would you say it's been since we've known each other?
Oh, very long, Karen. I think it might be about 40 years.
I think it might be. We were both about 3 years old when we...
There we go.
But we have sung right next to each other. We have sung in so many different places. And now she is a colleague at Northwestern University with me down the hall.
Go Cats.
So, yes, yeah, it's so exciting. She's been doing all of her wonderful composing and been singing for over 30 years, and she's got a beautiful soprano voice, and she's a wonderful composer, and now part of one of NAT's brand new committees, the Art Song Coalition. She's also, I know that I made a big deal out of all of that, but she is also the daughter-in-law of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And Patrice has put together a very special session for us. We will get to hear Notorious RBG in Song in sections, and they'll be interspersed with discussions about the work itself and the collaborative process that birthed this work involving composers and performers. Notorious RBG in Song includes songs and lyrics written by Patrice and Lori Laitman, who I know is here. Lori, you want to just say hi? Unmute yourself, and then Stacy Garrup, if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone.
We love Lori.
And I want to say special thank you to Lori and to Stacy for making their own arrangements with the Inscape Chamber Orchestra for these performances. It's really wonderful to have your work in all ways.
We love hearing from you all. This is going to be incredible. Also, you're going to hear music by Lee Hoiby, Vivian Fung, and John Musto. And this program includes some conversations among some of them as well. Then we come to the performers, and I know these singers too. Evan Bravos, unmute your microphone.
Hello,
And
all.
also Matthew Dean, unmute your microphone. Andrew Harley, who is our collaborative pianist.
We had a wonderful session with Andrew yesterday morning about collaborative piano. Hi, Andrew.
It really was. And Michelle Areyzaga. I'll tell you that I really know Evan Bravos very well because he studied with me during his master's, and during his undergraduate, he studied, who did you study with?
Ken Bozeman, who I'm sure is watching. Hi,
Hi, Ken.
Yeah, that's
Hi,
great.
Joanne.
And
Hi
Michelle,
to all of our colleagues.
and Michelle, I know that, didn't you study with Maria Lagios?
I still do, yes.
Yeah, and she's definitely one of our lifetime teachers that we've honored in Nats. And Matthew, I've just gotten to hear you in the last few years, and oh, what a voice. Tell us who do you study with?
I'm honored to be here. I've primarily coached with Andrew Schulze on Bach. My pathway to singing is really medieval music, Gregorian chant, and early folk music. So I've been a latecomer to the classical repertoire and lucky to have coaches like the people on this call.
And Andrew Harley, I loved your session. It was just wonderful. And tell us where you teach right now, Andrew.
Thanks so much. I mean, I had the benefit of being joined by some of my most distinguished colleagues as well. I'm currently the director of the collaborative piano program at the Eastman School of Music in Rochester. I'm also a member of the voice faculty as well.
That's wonderful. Well, many thanks to everybody involved. Also, we have Kuang-Hao Huang. You want to just say hi?
We're going to try to make Kuang-Hao laugh today. That's our absolute mission.
We want to see you online, so just say a few things and you'll come here.
You want to say hi?
Hey.
It's fun to see where people are.
Okay.
Very fun. So also we know that we're going to be hearing the Inscape Chamber Orchestra and Capitol Hearings a cappella ensemble. Now in the last part of this session, James Ginsberg, founder of CD Records, will join us to talk about his mother, Justice Ginsburg. I want you to feel free to put your questions in the chat. I will be monitoring that all the time. And read more about all of these fantastic artists in the guidebook app and the digital Nats conference booklet. So now sit back, grab your wine or your coffee, and enjoy this incredible presentation.
And I want to add a big thanks to everybody behind the scenes who made it possible to put the program and the lyrics in the guidebook. So along with the normal bio info and information about where you can get the scores, you can even follow along. There's a lot of words. I'm going to say a couple more words of personal thanks to the National Association of Teachers of Singing, to everybody in this incredible performing ensemble, and all the wonderful professionals who have shared their time and talents to make this show. The cast and I would like to share the following statement. We acknowledge and honor the Indigenous people who, for thousands of years, have cared for the land that we are now privileged to use. The essential contributions of Indigenous people continue to influence all communities. Knoxville, Tennessee, where the Nats conference was scheduled to convene, is the traditional home to dozens of Indigenous people, including the Muskogee, Yuchi, and Chickasaw. This video presentation was filmed in Washington, D.C., ancestral lands to those including the Anacostans, Piscataway, and Pamunkey peoples, and in Chicagoland, where the Potawatomi, Odawa, Kickapoo, and Ojibwe peoples represent 4 of more than 150 Indigenous groups. We strive to bring awareness, respect, and appreciation for all Indigenous people. We commit to work toward equity in our real and virtual environments. Bader Ginsburg. In the beginning, in 1933, she was Joan Ruth Bader. Her big sister Marilyn found her to be a very active little baby. Ever after, she was known to family and friends as Kiki. By 1943, World War II had impacted virtually every part of American society. Kiki was 10 years old, doing her part for the war effort, collecting the foil from gum wrappers and helping with her grade school's victory garden. News of the Holocaust had grown from a trickle of horrifying rumors to an undeniable flood of unthinkable atrocities. A whole generation of American men were being swept from one side of the world to another. In the States, exceptionally talented law clerks were hard to come by. Justice William O. Douglas began to open his mind about the possibilities of hiring one of the few women graduating from law school. In 1944, he offered a job to Lucille Lohman from his home state of Washington. Then, the men came home. It would be another 28 years before he hired a woman again. Not until 1981 would Sandra Day O'Connor become the first female justice of the United States Supreme Court.
When you say you have no available graduates whom you could recommend for appointment as my clerk, do you include women? Do you include women? Do you include women? It is possible. It is possible. I may decide to take one if I can find one good is. If I can find one. Do you include women? Do you include women? One who is absolutely first rate.
On a little island in New York Harbor, the personification of liberty stands in colossal form, her lamp lifted, her brow adorned. Words by Emma Lazarus are inscribed on the base of that statue. Those words, anchored deep in the heart of an empathetic and intelligent girl from a nearby immigrant neighborhood. Those words carried ideas that prepared her for a calling far beyond what she or anyone else could imagine. City's Garment District, 1929. Hardworking, tenacious Nathan Bader and his brother Izzy had a small business manufacturing economy-priced fur coats. A tough sell, like most things during the Great Depression. Nathan's quiet, circumspect manner kept him apart from others in the bustling garment district. He met Celia Amster when she was working in the office of one of his competitors. This bright and buoyant girl kept her nose in a book even while she walked. That is, until the day her nose was permanently reshaped, when she dropped off the sidewalk into a delivery cellar, book and all. Celia was a first-generation American born to Austrian parents. Nathan was a 13-year-old Ukrainian boy when he came to America. The only formal education Nathan ever received in his new home country was night school English class. Celia and Nathan started their lives together like other Jewish families of that era, sharing their little house in Belle Harbor, Queens, with Celia's sister, Beatrice, who had married Nathan's brother, Ben. Kiki and Marilyn's double cousin, Richard, was born just 3 months before Kiki. But when Kiki and Richard were toddlers, 6-year-old Marilyn came down with an ear infection that turned into fast-moving meningitis on a June day when Kiki was barely 15 months old and Richard a year and a half. Marilyn succumbed. Her death was an irreparable wound, something to be endured, never cured. Kiki and Richard grew up as sole representatives of the next generation in each of their families. Celia carried on, of course. She brought her surviving daughter weekly to the library. Kiki read and read and read and wrote and wrote and wrote. Celia encouraged Kiki's cello practice and piano. The baton twirling was tolerated. 2 of Celia's beloved Royal Dalton figurines fell victim to Kiki's earnest indoor efforts to twirl well enough to make the drill team. She did. Above all, Celia Amster Bader left her daughter 2 critical legacies: an appreciation for art and beauty that encouraged Ruth to embrace the delights of life, and a work ethic that required her always to strive to her highest abilities. How far is it from New York's Garment District to the U.S. Supreme Court? 1 generation. Dear Kiki,
Brooklyn is especially hot and humid again today. Unbearably tired, so much pain. Time is short now, what should I tell her? How may I spare? I'm just back from the library. I hope you're reading wonderful things too. Just don't wander around Camp Genoa with your nose in a book. What was I reading when I broke my nose falling through that open cellar door in front of Gus's Pickles? Cather, Willa Cather, I was just her age. I hope you're practicing the piano. I'm looking forward to hearing you play the Turkish Rondo when you come home. able to work for money without earning disrespect for her husband. And when shall I tell her about the money I've saved for her, dollar by dime, that no one else knows that she'll need when I'm gone? With the education and ability you're acquiring, you might even teach history someday at Madison High. I'll be gone. I know you'll always be a lady, whatever you do, and make your family proud. Don't give in to emotions, stay strong. So good, so smart, so beautiful, she glows. She mustn't be trapped by a man or a baby or even my wretched illness. Anger and envy and sadness just get in the way. And grief and mourning, Marilyn, only 6 gone. I'm hollowed from it all these years, and now pain. Be independent, prepare for difficulty. Stand on your own 2 feet, like Eleanor Roosevelt. How strong she'll need to be. When I marched as a suffragist. The World's Fair came to mind today, already 10 years ago. You and Cousin Richard made such a pretty pair. You in your baby blue pleated skirt and bolero, Richard with his curly red hair, entirely American. Stay close, help each other, I'll be gone. It's time for me to finish the soup. Your father and I miss you always, always, Mother.
On the day before her high school graduation, Ruth's mother passed away. It had been a 3-year struggle with ovarian cancer. Ruth did not deliver her carefully crafted graduation speech, nor did she say the mourner's Kaddish, because at that time, only men counted toward the minyan, the quorum of 10 required for public worship. A few months later, Ruth left for Cornell on a full scholarship and quietly went about excelling in academics, earning the friendship and respect of her peers along the way. Enter one Martin D. Ginsburg, whose quick wit and intelligence was matched only by his love of golf. Ruth still says to this day, he was the only boy I dated who cared that I had a brain, while readily admitting she was attracted to him because of his gray Chevrolet. This couple's 60-year love affair is well documented and a joy to tell, but there is one person in particular who deserves special credit for nurturing that love and Ruth's individual abilities: Marty's father, Morris Ginsburg. Morris supported Ruth in a way that few fathers-in-law would do even today. He and Ruth's treasured mother-in-law, Evelyn, demonstrated a joie de vivre that helped keep Ruth going through good times and bad. These are the challenging, loving words of wisdom Morris dispensed to his daughter-in-law.
For yourself. And you will find a way. You will find a way to do it. Your attitude should be, I will surmount this. Somehow I will surmount this. I will find a way to do what I want to do.
And that is the first of 3 parts of our pandemic version of Notorious RBG in song. You first heard Matthew Dean, tenor, in one of the songs that I wrote from The Long View, a portrait of Ruth Bader Ginsburg in 9 songs. And then you heard Michelle Areyzaga singing Celia, also from that song cycle. And then you heard Evan Bravos singing from the same 9-song cycle. But as you can tell, the show is pulled together in a way that tells the story of Ruth's family and her life. And it's such a thrill for me to find music like Lee Hoybee's song, which many of us in the audience already know, fitting so perfectly into her story and belonging in this beautiful selection of art songs that have turned into something like a show. So that's the first question in our chat. What helps make this a show, not a concert? And before we invite Lori Laitman to talk about how it feels to her, I just want to call everybody's attention to the backgrounds that you'll see from the recorded portions from Washington, D.C. They are made by the designer Yi Yun Nam, a wonderful young woman in Los Angeles. They move very subtly throughout the course of the song, and they provide this living environment that, for me, just immediately brings this show to life. I want to thank her so much for providing these beautiful reimaginings of photographs and materials that were provided to her by RBG and the Ginsburg family. It's just such a privilege to have that. So Lori Laitman, where are you? And what do you think about what makes this a show? Is your art song a show?
Well, it's part of a show now, thanks to you. You know, I mean, originally it was just a piece, a part of a song cycle, short song cycle, and it was scored for baritone and piano, but it also could be sung by countertenor or mezzo soprano. But when you contacted me about using it and orchestrating it, and you gave me a choice of instruments to use within your group, I chose to use cello and clarinet and add to it. But because it's part of a show and not part of a little cycle, there had to be adaptations to the structure to make it work. And so I added measures here and there, and I added the little coda at the end with the word, the brain. And for me, what makes this a show rather than a concert is it's the use of visuals, the use of storytelling, the use of you portraying Ruth and telling her story. It's an enveloping theatrical performance that's quite different than going to a concert of songs that may or may not have a theme that connect them throughout the evening. But this is one story beautifully told.
And I have to remind us about how fun it is that the actual genesis of our work together on this song was for RBG's 80th birthday.
Right.
Her children, Jane and James, wanted to give her newly commissioned songs by women composers. And I was lucky to be one of those commissioned. We'll hear from a statement from Vivian Fung, who was another, and Stacey Garrett will join us in our next chat to talk about whatever she wants to talk about. But when I heard and read through this song of yours, I was immediately struck by how appropriate it is for RBG, who is also a friend of yours. And I asked Jane and James if I could include this song in the performance for the birthday. And it's just marvelous. Didn't you write it for your mother-in-law?
Well, it was actually a double dedication. One was from my mother-in-law on her 76th birthday, but it was also dedicated to Warren Jones, the great collaborative pianist. And the reason I know you, Patrice, at all is because your mother-in-law.
Yes, she put us together.
We used to have a CD exchange going on.
Yes.
You know, she would give me, this is my son's latest, you know.
Yes.
This is his favorite soprano. That's how I met you.
And I received the Metropolitan Tower as my first Lori Laitman disc. And then the Lori Laitman life began. It's just such a privilege. Thank you for sharing so much. I want to ask the singers, what makes it a show for them? Anything in particular? Matt, of course, was the first of the additional singers that we heard from, and Matt will indeed be receiving the award for mise en scène, because what he put together from his home is just a phenomenal environment for his songs. Thank you, Matt. Are you having fun in the show, despite the fact that you're far away?
Very much so. The texts are so inspiring, thinking about everything that's transpired in the past month, and particularly the way that the Supreme Court and Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself have been involved in shaping American life at the moment for the better, has been very powerful. To be able to sing this music as we have for the past few months, and in fact, the last performance of this cycle being my last performance out in society. And I think for many of us, the final public performance has really made me reflect on collaborative music, collaborative singing with each other, and focused around texts like this. So it's been a embarrassment of riches, and the ability to go on camera and to try to recreate some of these historical moments has just been a lot of fun with the invention of the time that we are all in.
It's beautiful, and I very much appreciate your portrayal of Justice William O. Douglas. Thank you. Michelle, you are the first singer in Chicagoland to champion the Longview song cycle. And when I heard you sing Celia for the first time, I was knocked out. Thank you.
Well, when I first
much.
heard it for the first time, I was knocked out. The whole thing is just, it's a knockout piece, and it's so exciting to get to be part of this. I mean, I can't, I'm so, just pinch me right here. Regarding what makes this a show, I mean, there is a script, it's alive in its creation. The creative process is that I, as one of the performers, get to be on stage and in rehearsal with the composer of these works, and we're making adaptations right up to the last minute about when to enter, what props to use, and sometimes when we perform this live, I even get to say a couple of the words of the script too with you, which is
That's
fun.
right.
In my character.
Love that.
Mm-hmm.
I just love that.
The songs, each song could be an act of an opera with scene changes and, you know, costume changes as these characters go back and tell their stories and reminisce about times past, you know.
Well, in addition to playing RBG's mom, we're going to hear from you as her husband, well, as her reading a letter from her husband, really, and then as one of her secretaries, so, and a Spanish secretary at that. So it's just so wonderful to hear you in these pieces. And my only real regret about this performance today is that we can't give John Musto's Litany as a quartet, because we found a way to sing it all together live, and we just couldn't make that happen for Pandemic Land. But hopefully the next time we're together, we'll have it. And so, where's the kid? I'm the crone, and we got a kid in this group, Evan Bravos. I am so excited that this young man, whom I first knew as a student at my former school, Lawrence University, Conservatory of Music, then at Northwestern, where I followed many of his wonderful performances, and now as a colleague and a professional. Thank you for joining us and playing the oldest guy in the whole thing, Morris.
Well, I have this quarantine beard growing, so that's fitting for. Honored to be a part of this work with such fabulous colleagues, and to be here today with you all, and to have the opportunity to sing something at all. As Matt said, our March 8th performance was the last performance out in public. So having the opportunity to sing at all has been wonderful. For me, what makes it a show and not a concert is just that, the cultural relativism and the intersectionality of the piece, and how it's so relevant and prevalent in our day and age and in our times that we're living in. Make it not a concert. A concert feels more buttoned up, and this is not that to me.
Well, the next time we're in public together doing this piece, I want to see the soft shoe along with the singing of that last jazz piece. And I think we're headed back into the next segment with you, now playing the son, not the father, husband of RBG, Martin Ginsburg, giving a speech about his life working together with his wife, and the critical case that created the opportunity for his wife to move from one type of law career to another.
Enjoy, everyone. I wish I had had some goggle glasses, but just imagine those.
Morris's son, Marty, was cut from the very same cloth as his father. Ruth was Marty's pride and joy, but along with the affection, appreciation, and esteem in which he held his dear wife, Marty also took mischievous glee in explaining and embellishing his own role in helping his spouse become the notorious RBG we know today.
Thank you. My field is tax law. Instead of speaking on that exceedingly amusing subject, I shall speak on the only significant thing I have done in my long life with Honorable Ruth. It is the one case in which we served together, and it is how the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals and I got my wife a very good job. When I practiced law in New York City and Ruth taught at Rutgers in Newark, we worked in the evenings at home. Her room was bigger. In my little room, one night I came upon a one-page brief written by Charles Moritz, a pro se litigant with a most persuasive argument. If I were a dutiful daughter instead of a dutiful son, I would have received the tax deduction. This makes no sense. Well, I went to the big room next door, handed the case to my spouse and said, "Read this," with a warm and friendly snarl. She said, "I don't read tax cases." I said, "Read this one," and went back to my little room. Not 5 minutes later, Ruth stepped into my little room and with the broadest possible smile said, "Let's take it." And we did. Mr. Moritz was claiming a $600 deduction for his dependent mother. We won the 10th Circuit, but the government claimed that this decision cast doubt on literally hundreds of federal statutes differentiating solely on the basis of sex. They petitioned for cert, but cert was denied. And with their list of hundreds of statutes spit out by a shiny new mainframe computer, the list became the fuel for Ruth's career, her new career. Those hundreds of statutes fuel for Ruth's career as an appellate advocate. And this, of course, led to her next career on the higher side of the bench. So, as you can see, in bringing that tax case to Ruth's big room 40 years ago, I changed history for the better, and therefore I shall claim I thereby rendered significant service to our nation. All in all, great accomplishment from a case where the tax in dispute totaled exactly $296.70. Thank you.
Marty's perspective on life had been formed by an early brush with death. 25 years old, a father, and a third-year law student, he was diagnosed with testicular cancer. He did so much more than survive despite the odds and the aggressive treatment. Marty thrived. And once he was back on his feet, Marty made sure that everyone around him thrived as well. Ever the golf enthusiast, Marty somehow found time to distinguish himself as one of the nation's top tax lawyers, as a joyous and talented chef, as an enthusiastic parent, and as his wife's #1 fan and teaser-in-chief. But some 5 decades later, cancer again manifested, this time as an inoperable spinal tumor. From his hospital bed, in the final days of his life, Marty wrote one last letter to his wife. On legal pad, of course. My dearest Ruth, you are the only person I have loved in my life. Setting aside a bit parents and kids and their kids. I have admired and loved you almost from the day we first met, some 56 years ago. What a treat it has been! What a treat it has been to watch you progress to the very top of the legal world, to the very top of the legal world. I will be in the hospital until Friday. Between then and now, I shall think hard on my remaining health and life, and whether on balance the time has come for me to tough it out, or to take leave of life. The loss of quality no assembly overruns. I hope you will support where I come out, but I understand
Signed, Marty.
Let's leave Washington, D.C. 2010. Return to the Upper East Side to take a peek at the vitality of life in the Ginsburg household in 1960s New York City. At the beginning of that decade, Marty and Ruth were the proud parents of Jane, the one child they expected to raise due to the cancer that Marty had survived. He was working hard to make partner at Weil, Gotshal and Menges. Ruth clerked for U.S. District Court Judge Edmund Palmieri for 2 years, and then spent much of 62 and 63 in Sweden, studying and writing about that country's legal system, often with young Jane by her side. By 1965, when Ruth was in her second year teaching at Rutgers in Newark, for less pay than a man in the same job, said the administrators, because she had a husband with a good job, miracle baby James made his surprise entrance. 3 songs carry us through these years, each one shining its own unique light on feminism. We called it women's lib back then. Last song will be Jane's tongue-in-cheek recipe for a typical evening at home before Mother was liberated from the kitchen. In the middle, a story of baby James's escapades at the Dalton School, and first, a singular remark overheard by 6-year-old Jane while playing at a friend's house.
I did it on a dare. I only took it up 1 floor. I wish it had been more. Mr. Jones wasn't there, and I did it on a dare, and we all know exactly how it works. Push to push the heavy door, then the cranky gate opens, you get in, and pull the whole contraption shut. Then you grip the ladder and you wish to sit wherever, and go! Whoa! Whoa! cleaning right outside there when I stopped. Only one floor above, with his mop and his bucket, he was quite a bit surprised. Come to think of it, so was I.
To which it would be put. Add carrot, celery, and red wine, and simmer this mess for a very long time. While this is simmering, drink some black coffee, read some advanced sheets, and tell one of your children to do her homework for the third time. This dubious working and crustacean is the best part, is the best part, and therefore requires extraction by pouring boiling water down the sides of the pot. Be careful not to burn yourself during this operation. Next, remove the former brisket and most of the carrots from the pot and puree the remaining contents in a blender. The blender contents are doomed to become sauce. Slice the former brisket against the grain and keeping your fingers well out of the nice path. The memory of roast ham with sliced thumb should serve as sufficient admonition. Pour the purified sauce over the brisket slices and reheat in the oven, which you will have lighted soon enough after turning on the gas to avoid an eyebrow-singeing conflagration. Carry forth to the groaning boy, and don't forget to heat, but not bake the plates.
And that was Pot Roast a la RBG, set by Vivian Fung to a text of Jane Ginsberg. Vivian couldn't be with us today, but she sent us a nice note. She says, "I regret not being able to attend this wonderful performance. I'm honored to have composed a work based on one of my unsung heroes, RBG." I think she's being sung pretty much. I also am blessed to know Jim Ginsberg, Patrice, and family for many years. The Pot Roast song was fun to compose, but challenging because of the amount of text involved. Obviously, La Bonne Cuisine was an immediate inspiration behind this piece. Footnote for all of you who might not know La Bonne Cuisine. This is a set of 4 little songs by Leonard Bernstein, written in 1947, based on an 1899 publication in French by Émile Dumont called Fine French Cooking, Everything That Has to Do with the Table, Manual Guide for City and Country. And it is wickedly difficult to sing and to speak. So Vivian really did a wonderful job of reminding us of that piece, as well as writing her own fabulous piece. Vivian goes on to say, "I wanted to portray the whimsical, humorous aspects of this text, and also the frenzied nature in which a mother juggles career, family, and home all at once." And she says, "Don't forget to visit my website, vivianfung.ca," she's Canadian, "for more info about this work and my other works as well. Feel free to contact me and stay in touch." Thanks, Vivian. That was fabulous. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Kuang-Hao Huang, who played that pandemic piano accompaniment. I'd like to continue now on this theme of words. This is perhaps the wordiest show in the world. And I'd like to invite our wonderful composer of My Dearest Ruth, the letter set on Martin's last letter to his wife, RBG. Stacy, can you turn on your mic and your
Yes, Mike, can
image?
you hear me?
Great, yes, we can. Thank you so much for sharing this beautiful, beautiful piece with us. This is one of the 3 original pieces, Vivian's, yours, and mine, that we'll hear Anita's story coming up in the next segment. We're comprising the 80th birthday present. What about the words? Tell us any words. What do you want to say?
Well, first of all, it was really an honor to be asked to set the letter, this last letter by Jim and Jane for RBG's birthday party. Setting a letter is definitely a little bit challenging because you want to for me, I always want to preserve the words, but I needed to find the internal rhythm of the words to have music. So, and on top of that, as we know, well, actually, you probably didn't see it. If you go, here's the cover of my piece, by the way.
Lovely, lovely. And thank you to Tom Bachtel for that wonderful caricature that you've used. Yay.
And it's published by Presser. But if you look inside, you'll see the actual letter, and you'll see that some of the things in there are the specific date and hospital. And I had to remove those bits of information because that doesn't quite, it won't be as timeless. So if I just say I'll be at the hospital until Friday, that's better than spelling out all the details. I also was careful not to repeat too much. So when I do, it's only for dramatic effect. For instance, at the very end, he says, "I will not love you a jot less." And then I shorten it to "not a jot." And I repeat that again for a little emphasis. And the most ironic part is that I actually left out 2 words by accident. And they were the words "imbalance." And Jim and Jane afterwards said, I think can you put them back in? Because for them, these words really meant a lot. It was part of
his speech habit, yes.
So it was really interesting to say, wow, my mind just went right over that. But it's so important that, of course, I'm going to put this into music. And that performance right now was just absolutely lovely. I, too, was at that March 8th performance in Skokie. And that was the last performance I saw live too. So, and it's so nice to have the chance to hear this again.
Thank you very, very much, Stacy. Looking forward to all the rest of your career and the wonderful music you're going to create for singers and for everyone else who makes music. Fabulous.
Thank you.
I want to share another statement coming from my incredible long friend, Peter Labella, who has the most amazing career in music. He's been playing in the Lyric Orchestra for 40 years. He's a fabulous fiddle player. I knew him from Music of the Baroque. And he started writing these arrangements for a group that I sang with that was a chamber music group. And his skill in arranging was so phenomenal that I really could hardly believe it. And I was fortunate to be able to work on another project with him before this one, Divas of Mozart's Day. So it's been so great to have Peter as the lead arranger for my music and co-arranger for a lot of the things that we did on this project. Peter couldn't be with us today, but he and I worked on this statement together. When we were choosing instruments for our little band, we had to choose wisely as we limited ourselves to 6 players. The big challenge was that there are so many different musical styles to cover over the course of the musical journey, from recognizable art music to musical theater to jazz. Putting the piano at the center was a no-brainer. Adding the violin and the cello gave us a string trio, which is a reliable standard classical ensemble. For the Broadway and jazz-inflected sections, we chose to add the bass and drums. That gave us a piano, bass, drums, jazz trio. It also gave us add-on percussion options. The compelling bright notes of the bells turned out to be a really special way to characterize RBG throughout the show. The final instrument we chose is the clarinet for its extreme versatility. It provides a compelling solo voice with either the classical or the jazz trio. It can also function as an inner voice between the violin and the cello in place of a viola. Major bonus, the player can double on bass clarinet, one of my personal favorite instruments, and unquestionably the voice of Marty Ginsburg, robust and humorous and mellow. So these 3 interlocking ensembles, sextet, jazz trio, and piano trio, let us vary the orchestration between movements, providing color and contrast throughout the show. So with that, we have one more element to expose in this panoply of options that we have for presenting Notorious RBG in song. And that is the guest appearance of Capitol Hearings, choral ensemble from Washington, D.C., Dilip Srihari is representing the Capitol hearings and is their wonderful music director and conductor. I am so grateful that they agreed to perform the first choral version of the eighth song in my song cycle called Dissenter of the Universe. It is so word heavy because it is representing 5 dissenting opinions that Justice Ginsburg has read from the bench out loud. And the setups for those dissenting opinions are read by a guest reader. So Eric Motley from the Aspen Institute is whom you will hear reading the setups. Dilip, are you there? Can you talk to us about words, about singing all those words?
Yes, Patrice, hi. And
hi.
Thanks so much. And so I'm in the position of speaking about a piece of music that the audience has not yet heard.
That's right. I'm sorry about that.
So with that in mind, I'll just say a few things. First of all, thank you again for involving me and the Capitol hearings on this project. The movement is called Dissenter of the Universe, which is a very clever pun. So it seemed only appropriate that an ensemble called the Capitol hearings would take it on in the choral version. Personally, in addition to directing this ensemble, I happen to be a Cornellian and a lawyer myself. So being able to do this for Justice Ginsburg was a special thrill. For me. In fact, I was a law student at Georgetown, but I did not have a chance to take Professor Ginsburg's tax class while I was there.
That would be Martin D. Ginsburg, yes.
Correct, yeah. So when I first found out about this, of course, and I realized that our role in this wonderful work with all of these other movements exploring these deeply emotional topics regarding Justice Ginsburg's life history and her family history, that we were going to do the movement that was really about her life's professional accomplishment in terms of dissenting opinions from the bench. And any lawyer who follows the Supreme Court will tell you that the dissents are always wittier. So the selection of text was really terrific. And 2 of the 5 opinions deal with affirmative action issues. 2 of them sort of deal with women's gender discrimination issues, one on pay and one on birth control. And the last one sort of deals with voting rights discrimination and the Voting Rights Act. And so for the singers, it was a real joy to be able to work with these words, to spit them out as fast as we could while trying to get some good diction out there. Took some work
and some attitude. I have to say, you guys really pull the attitude through because there's a lot of heart behind these words.
Yeah. Sorry. I was going to say, yes, there really is. And there's just one line that's my favorite. She's referring to the pre-clearance program, which relates to voting rights and Justice Department approval of what states may be doing to discriminate. And she refers to a really great line about throwing away your umbrella. I won't spoil the whole line, but it was just really wonderful to be able to articulate, Justice Ginsburg's professional message in these Supreme Court opinions that will probably be read by lawyers for at least the next 50, if not the next 100 years.
It's fabulous to be able to pull off this major trick, I have to say. And the form of this piece, you'll hear the 5 dissenting opinions separated by these repetitive orchestral sections. And then you'll hear a personal statement that RBG made in response to a question during an interview. So it's like a little coda to this old-fashioned form that we're doing, sort of rondo, ritornello form. So thank you so much, Dilip, for joining us, for bringing the Capitol hearings into this incredible project. And that piece is actually now, we're performing it as a solo quartet, which is also really interesting and fun. And I just can't wait to see the next iteration of this. So here we go. Oh no, we have one more group to hear from. The dynamic duo, Kuang-Hao Huang and Andrew Harley. We have an embarrassment of riches in the piano conducting department here. Kuang-Hao and I have been performing this piece for a couple of years now. He helped me really workshop it and get it into its final form as a song cycle and then develop it into the show. And then came Andrew Harley. Andrew Harley played the East Coast debut of the song cycle, The Long View, with Susanna Phillips and Janae Bridges sharing the cycle between them. And now we get to have both of them on the project at the same time. Oh my God. Kuang-Hao anything to say about the words of this piece? You've done such an incredible job of setting up the orchestra as a conductor and playing these backing tracks for the pandemic performances today.
Well, I think for me personally, it's really amazing just to see how my perception of the words has grown over time. You know, because we've lived with these songs for so long, and just how it never gets old. If anything, it just gets more and more meaningful each time. And
that's really good to hear, because I hope we get to do it a lot more.
And the music too. You know, I feel like a lot of it is really, really spot on. And I don't have enough good things to say. You always bring me into these really incredible projects, and you always challenge me in ways I would have never challenged myself. So thank
for
you.
an old trombone player, you're doing some hard stuff, I gotta say. Thank you, Kuang-Hao, really. Andrew Harley, would you please speak to the incredible process of collaborating on spoken text and set us up for going into this next segment, which will show the audience the score and what you're seeing when I'm speaking?
That's super interesting, because in the versions that we've had over the years, I'm not sure what the version is that the viewers will see, but in many of our versions, the text and the music are not specified in how they kind of correlate. Yes, in yesterday's session, we were talking about the concept of intimacy in terms of collaboration, and Patrice, the incredible way that you've set up this underscoring for the text certainly allows an incredibly kind of intimate interplay between the words and the music. You know, so for me, it's about this correlation between the flow of your text and the flow of the music. So obviously, it'll never be the same. It will never be the same in any kind of performance, because what I perceive to be the emotional crux of a sentence may not necessarily be the same as another pianist. But that is essentially what I'm doing. I have the text memorized, and then I am responding to the speed and flow of the delivery as it occurs to align what I believe to be the corresponding emotional moment within the music.
That is exactly what you do so beautifully. I hear you and I respond to your pacing, and I know you're responding to my pacing. It's really fabulous, just fabulous.
I am, and as beautiful as it is to play the songs, which I just adore, there's something, when I turn the page, when I'm playing this work, and I turn the pages and I see that it's the underscoring sections, there's something so attractive about doing it on the fly and making these correlations just work in the moment that one can't really.
Right. This is a perfect place for me to make a confession that I don't think I've shared with you yet then. Because of all the people I've ever worked with, I believe you have been the most rigorous about knowing exactly what a performance could be, down to exactly where the breath will be and exactly where the next start will be. And the first rehearsal I had with you, I remember I was changing the phrasing on this one repetitive, was Laurie Laitman's song, actually. And I kept changing it. And I sensed there was a little confusion or consternation. And I had to go away and think, he's used to having things be exact. And that put me at a new level in that world. You really challenged me to decide and stay on a decision. And apparently I'm challenging you to be a little jazzier.
You know how controlling a confidence can be.
Oh, man. Oh, you guys, Kuang-Hao and Andrew, thank you. Here we go into the third section and final section of Notorious RBG in song. You will hear Michelle Areyzaga singing Anita's story. Then you will hear the Capitol hearings with Dilip Srihari conducting Dissenter of the Universe. You will hear John Musto's own arrangement of his fabulous song Litany from Shadow of the Blues on a text by Langston Hughes. And then you will hear the epilogue, the long view, questions answered, and we will have a Q&A, a real one, with James Ginsberg after the show. Words. Words matter. Sometimes one word makes all the difference. And sometimes one secretary makes all the difference. In 1972, Ruth Ginsburg became the first woman in a tenured position at Columbia Law School. When she taught there, Millicent Tryon was one of her secretaries. Here's what Millicent said to Ruth. I'm typing all these briefs and articles, and the word sex juts out on every page. Don't you know that those 9 men, when they hear that word, their first association is not what you want them to be thinking about? Why don't you use the word gender? It is a grammatical type, and it will ward off distracting associations. Millicent wasn't the only astute secretary to help propel the cases of Professor Ginsburg, who in 1973 was also one of 4 general counsel to the American Civil Liberties Union. Years before at Rutgers, where young Professor Ginsburg had a burgeoning career as a litigator but did not have the regular services of a secretary, her resourceful husband Marty devised a solution. He tapped into the typing pool at Weil, Gotshal, and Menges, his own place of employment, singling out the best and brightest, who happened to be a recent immigrant from Spain and a marvelous flamenco dancer. Her name was Anita Ramos de Escudero, and her feminism developed much to her own surprise, thanks to those reams of handwritten material on sex-based discrimination, written by the little woman with the soft-spoken voice, wearing something beautiful. I had been in New York only a very short time.
I got a job in a law firm, typing in the steno pool. One morning, 100 pages of handwritten material from some lady lawyer. And her method of delivery, her own husband in his shirt sleeves. The way she used words, I had never seen or heard. I had never even thought. Sexual, female, male, gender-based discrimination. I started typing. Shirt-sleeved lawyer husband, again the yellow pad of notes, again this horrifying, nonsensical subject of sex discrimination. I kept typing. The shirt-sleeved lawyer husband announced, "My wife is coming in." I thought, good God, here she comes, In walked this little woman with a soft-spoken voice, wearing a green dashiki. She's not supposed to be like this. She's supposed to look like Georges Sand. Where's the cigar? The fly on her pants. I kept typing. question, esta es mi mujer. Yo no soy tu mujer. Soy una persona. Mi nombre es Anita Luas Ramos Costero de Escudero. From the back of the room boomed the host's 80-year-old grandmother. Viva America! Viva America! RBG converted me through therapy.
Words. The words of a Supreme Court opinion can be fodder for study, discussion, argument, and wonder. When a dissenting opinion is summarized from the bench and read out loud by its author, the justice intends that the world sit up and take notice. This is an important matter that may affect generations to come, and the justice reading believes that the incorrect majority ruling must be overturned. 5 excerpts from the 19 dissenting opinions to date, read out loud by Justice Ginsburg, reveal her range of expression and the depth of her commitment to the underlying principles and ethics that guide her.
June 2003, Gratz versus Bollinger. Is the University of Michigan's affirmative action program constitutionally sound?
Actions designed to burn groups long denied full citizenship stature are not sensibly ranked with measures taken to hasten the day when entrance discrimination and its after effects have been extirpated. The stain of racial oppression is still visible in our society, and the determination to hasten its removal remains vital.
May 2007, Ledbetter versus Goodyear. Is the individual statutorily entitled to sue for reparations for pay discrimination?
The court does not comprehend or is indifferent to the insidious way in which women can be victims of pay discrimination. Title VII was meant to govern real-world employment practices. And that world is what the court ignores today.
June 2013, Shelby County versus Holder, regarding the constitutionality of 2 provisions of the Voting Rights of 1965.
Voting discrimination still exists. No one doubts that. Throwing out pre-clearance when it has worked and is continuing to work is like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you are not getting wet. Hubris is a fit word for today's democracy.
sexes? Is the university's affirmative action program constitutionally sound?
I have said before and reiterate here that only an ostrich could regard the supposedly neutral alternatives as race unconscious.
June 2014, Burwell versus Hobby Lobby Stores Incorporated. Can privately held corporations deny birth control insurance coverage to the employees if the owners object on religious grounds?
The exemption sought by Hobby Lobby and Conestoga would deny legions of women who do not hold their employers' beliefs access to contraceptive coverage. The court, I fear, has ventured into a minefield. In my judgment, the court steers in the wrong direction when important matters are at stake.
The words of Langston Hughes, New York's great poet. Harlem's voice heard round the world. A voice with 1,000 timbres and a vast lexicon to invoke the power of protection, to supplicate. To rage, to draw together, to seek justice,
In the
Words. The words of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg finish our show. Speaking candidly about her own life, concluding our musical portrait, bringing our show to a close, but not the epic and notorious story of RBG. What qualities should a president seek in a Supreme Court justice? Someone who thrives in the study of law, someone able to read and absorb quickly massive amounts of material. Those are the qualities a president should seek. It is the best and the hardest job I have ever had. As I grow older, it is harder for me to do the job. At least until age 70, I could extend my hours so the day could last until I finished whatever I was doing. Well, now I have to leave off every now and then and sleep for hours. As I did this morning, I slept through 3 alarms. Finally, a U.S. Marshal opened my door and ever so gently woke me up. And the second part of the question was about polarization. Lots and lots of words there. Jim Ginsberg is with me now. He won't be able to hear very well unless I give him the headphones. Even though he's a record producer, his equipment in the basement seems to be malfunctioning. So he's here with me now. And before we let him answer a couple of questions, I want to show the beautiful cover art that Constance P. Beatty made for the song cycle, The Long View, a portrait of Ruth Bader Ginsburg in 9 songs, which you can get from Glendora Jones at Classical Vocal Reprints, or from Lee Newcomer at Performers Music, or from me. Jim, what is the strangest thing about doing this whole project?
I don't know about strange, but I guess what I love about it is how organically it came about. As I think was told earlier, this all started with my sister and me looking for a good 80th birthday present for my mother, which ended up being commissioning 3 women composers to write songs. And one of those composers is sitting right next to me, who then had the idea that maybe one song wasn't enough to tell the story of RBG, and came up with the idea of doing a whole cycle. And from the cycle came the recording, which also included those other songs. And from the recording came the show.
It's a miracle, and it took a whole huge village to make it all happen, that's for sure. And I have to say that if I weren't part of the Ginsburg family, I don't think I would have had the nerve to try to pull this off, because there's just so much family history, and I was very fortunate to get permission to go through the archives at the Library of Congress. And unfortunately, I saw lots of your postcards from summer camp, but it surely gave me some insight into portraying you as a young elevator thief. So what's your next project? Sadie Records?
Oh my goodness. Well, we have so many. We've been very lucky during the pandemic to be able to continue producing our recordings from material that had already been recorded. So we have lots of wonderful albums coming out. With Sadie Records is a nonprofit label devoted specifically to musicians and from Chicago. So we have albums coming out. We just released one with Eighth Blackbird, the wonderful contemporary sextet. We have one coming out next month with the Pacifica Quartet, all Pulitzer Prize winning American contemporary composers who happen to be women, which is nice. We've one with the wonderful pianist Jorge Federico Osorio coming out in August. I was honored to produce both that and the Pacifica Quartet.
There's lots of music by Stacey Garrup on
That's
Sadie
right.
Records.
Yep.
And Vivian Fung.
Yeah. So Chicago composers like Stacey is also a big part of our mission, and like Patrice Michaels. So it's just a real joy to be able to produce this stuff. And I'm happy to say tomorrow I will go into recording sessions as a producer for the first time in many, many months. We lost pretty much the whole spring.
But I bet there's no singers in that session, are there?
No, we were supposed to do a session with the singer last week and that got nixed, but we're hoping to resurrect that in July.
But we want everybody to stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you on the other side. Thanks, everybody. Love you.